After giving birth, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw only the shadow of the woman I once was. My husband only poured more poison. You're not the woman you used to be. Who would even look at you now? His words hurt more than the stretch marks on my body. I tried to be the ideal mother, wife, and woman, but no matter what I did, he only saw my changes. One day, I decided enough was enough. I started working out, filming my journey in fitness vlogs for moms. Soon after, I was invited onto a TV show, then into a commercial. And when he messaged me one day, "You've truly changed," I smiled. Because for the first time, it didn't sound like an insult, but a recognition. Because I became who he never allowed me to be myself. After giving birth, it was like I woke up in a new body, one I no longer felt was mine. It ached, it changed, it demanded patience, and I looked in the mirror and couldn't understand where the girl I once was had gone. I used to love my reflection, long hair, a fit body, a smile that people often said, with her, even Monday feels like a holiday. Now, shadows under my eyes, stretch marks, perpetual fatigue. But the worst wasn't that. The worst was the way he started looking at me. That changed almost imperceptibly. At first, little things. He forgot to say, "You're beautiful." He didn't hug me when I stood in front of the mirror, trying to find clothes that would fit. Then his jokes started. "You're in your pajamas again? Maybe you should wear something to remind you that you're still a woman, not just a nanny." He said it with a smile, but there was something sharp in every word, cutting me from the inside. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, he's just tired. It's temporary. We're both under stress right now. But when I stood by the crib with our daughter at night and watched him sleep, not even stirring at the baby's cry, I wanted to scream. I felt a loneliness growing inside, so quiet it was barely audible, but it was eating me away slowly. One evening, when I tried to talk to him, he didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. "Matt," I said softly, "I feel like we're drifting apart." He sighed, looked up, and said, "You've just changed." "I don't know. You're not the woman I married anymore." I stayed silent. Because what can you say when the person you love looks at you as if you're a stranger? That night, I sat in the dark for a long time, next to the crib. My daughter softly snored, and for the first time, I thought, maybe he's right? Maybe I really am no longer beautiful, interesting, or needed. And while the world slept, a pain was born within me that would later become my strength. Weeks passed, then months. It seemed an invisible wall had grown between us, one I could no longer reach through. We lived under the same roof, but not together. He was consumed by his phone, his job, his messages, his colleagues. I was consumed by bottles, wipes, sleepless nights, and endless doubts. Before, when he came home from work, I would run to him, wanting to share news, tell him something funny. Now, I just watched him walk past me, without even asking how my day was. Sometimes he'd toss out a brief, "You haven't put on makeup again?" Or, "Maybe join a gym, it'll distract you a bit." I smiled, though everything inside me was tightening. Because join a gym didn't sound like concern, it sounded like, "I don't like you anymore." I noticed how he lingered longer on his phone screen, how he smiled while reading messages. When I asked who it was, he shrugged, "Just a colleague. We're just joking around." But just joking around turned into, "He's staying late at work. Then he needs to help with a presentation over the weekend." I wanted to believe it wasn't what I thought. But at night, when he returned, he didn't smell of coffee or the office. He smelled of foreign perfume. Light, expensive, feminine. Once, I gathered my courage and asked directly, "Matt, are you seeing someone?" He smiled, without taking his eyes off the TV. "You're going crazy. Just relax. And maybe finally start thinking about yourself, not just the baby." Those words hurt more than if he'd admitted to cheating. Because he didn't even see the hurting woman in me. Only an overly emotional mother. I started to keep silent. At first, to avoid fighting. Then, because there was nothing left to say. We stopped eating dinner together, stopped laughing. I no longer felt him next to me even when he slept beside me. Our intimacy disappeared. First physical, then emotional. And the scariest thing was that he didn't even notice. One morning, as he was leaving the house, I accidentally overheard him telling someone on the phone, "I don't have a wife at home anymore, just a shadow." I stood behind the door, clutching a cup of coffee to my chest. The coffee grew cold, and with it, everything that remained of love. That day, I finally realized we weren't a couple anymore. We were just two strangers connected by a child and a shared address. I started losing myself slowly. There was no single sharp moment. Just day after day, I faded. I stopped wearing makeup because I wasn't going anywhere anyway. I stopped taking photos because I didn't want to see how my body had changed. Even laughing became difficult. Everything inside me seemed to have shut down. Matt no longer touched me, didn't look at me, didn't notice me. We could sit next to each other at the table in silence, while the clock in the living room ticked away the remnants of our married life. Sometimes he would say harsh phrases as if accidentally, but I knew it wasn't an accident. "You know, my colleague has 3 kids, and she looks wow. Maybe you should ask her how she manages it." I just nodded, because I no longer had the strength to argue. And at night, when I was feeding our daughter, I cried so quietly so as not to wake her or him. I kept it all inside until the pain became a permanent state. Guilt washed over me for not being the person he wanted to see, for not being able to be enough. Sometimes I looked in the mirror and asked myself mentally, "Where are you? Where did you disappear to?" There was no answer. One evening, I finally dared to talk to him to try one last time. "Matt," I said, "I feel like we've drifted apart. Maybe we need help? A therapist, a vacation, just time alone." He shrugged and said curtly, without even looking at me, "I don't need a therapist. I need a wife. Not a constantly tired mother with a sour face. You just spoiled." Those words hit like a slap. I stood silently until he went into the bedroom. And in that moment, I knew something in me was permanently broken. I stopped trying to please him. Stopped explaining why I was hurting. I just fell silent. I performed my duties, cooking, cleaning, taking care of our daughter. But inside, I felt like I had turned into a shadow. Except, precisely this silence, this emptiness, gradually began to fill with something new. At first, I didn't understand what it was. And then I realized it wasn't sadness. It was weariness from the pain, which would soon grow into determination. I didn't know what I would do next, but for the first time in a long time, a quiet voice emerged within me. "Maybe it's time to think about yourself?" I can't say that one day I simply woke up and decided to start a new life. No, it wasn't like that. I was just tired of the tears, the silence, the indifference of every day being the same as the last. One morning, I watched our daughter sleep, so small, so defenseless, and suddenly I thought, she's growing up. And one day, she'll look at me and understand whether or not to love herself. I don't want her to see a woman who gave up. That same day, I pulled out my old sneakers that were gathering dust in the closet. At first, I just went for a short walk around the block. Then I did my first exercises from YouTube. My body protested, but my soul came alive. I started recording short videos on my phone, not for anyone else, but for myself. To see that I still could, that I was still alive. Once, I don't know why, I posted a video on TikTok, my body after childbirth. I am not ashamed of it. The video was simple. I was standing in sweatpants with messy hair, but with a smile. And the caption, "This body gave life. It is not spoiled. It is strong." In the morning, I woke up to dozens of messages. Women from all over the world were writing, "Thank you for showing this. I feel the same way. You have no idea how much I needed to see this." I cried. But for the first time, not from pain, from relief, from knowing I wasn't alone. That same week, I created a page, Fit Mom Reborn. At first, it was just a diary, posts about workouts, about tired days, about small victories. Then tips, recipes, videos with my daughter. And the more I wrote, the more I felt I was returning to myself. Matt watched with skepticism. "Do you really think anyone cares about you sweating in a gym? You should focus on the baby instead." I didn't reply, because for the first time in my life, I was doing something for myself, and it wasn't about losing weight, not about being better for someone. It was about surviving. Every day, I woke up earlier to manage a workout before my daughter woke up. Every new like or comment became a small piece of evidence for me. I still matter. With time, I felt my body changing. I saw a living woman in the mirror again, not a shadow. And even though Matt still grumbled that I'm too obsessed with this fitness thing, another voice was already maturing inside me, strong, confident, finally saying, "You didn't spoil. You were reborn." Time passed, and my blog began to grow faster than I expected. First, a few hundred subscribers. Then thousands. Women wrote that I inspired them to love their bodies again, that they started going for runs, waking up earlier, changing their diet. And every thank you from them seemed to fill the void that his words had once left. I wasn't just working out anymore, I was living. I remember the day I was first invited to an online program for young mothers to talk about postpartum fitness. I sat in front of the camera with my daughter on my lap and said, "You don't have to apologize for your body." It did something incredible. It gave life. And that alone makes you strong. When the broadcast ended, I looked at my phone, dozens of new messages, requests, likes. And then a short, cold message from Matt, "Don't overdo it. Are you some kind of guru on Instagram now?" I simply replied, "I just want to be myself." My confidence annoyed him. He grumbled that I was losing touch with reality, starting a fan club instead of a family, chasing likes. But when we went out, I caught his glances, how he watched the men who turned to look at me. And I saw it made him angry, because now he couldn't say that I had spoiled. Once, he even snapped, "You've changed. You've become too self-confident. Don't forget who you used to be." I just smiled then, because for the first time, I understood this is exactly what I was striving for to change. Not for him, for myself. Later, sports clothing brands started writing to me, offering collaborations. I got my first contract small, but honestly earned. When I told Matt about it, he just shrugged. "Oh, now you're a TikTok star. We'll see how long this lasts." But it was he, it seemed, who began to fear that I was no longer the woman he could devalue. I felt it in his behavior, in his sharp words, in his cold glances. And the stronger I became, the smaller he seemed. I was invited to a photo shoot for an article about women who changed their lives after motherhood. It was a small online publication, but for me, it was something more. When the photo was published, hundreds of people wrote to me. And among all the messages, a short one from him, "Didn't think you'd actually get this far." I wanted to reply with something harsh, but I simply wrote, and I always knew I could. And for the first time in a long time, I turned off my phone, smiled, and just hugged my daughter. Because I finally felt I am not living for someone else. I am living for myself. That day started as usual. Morning porridge, baby laughter, Matt's work calls in the next room. I had learned to ignore his coldness, just to do my own thing. But that morning, as I was cleaning, his phone fell from the table, his phone. And the screen lit up, opening a message. I wasn't looking for it, honestly. But a few words, "Last night was incredible. Missing you already," shattered everything that was left of our marriage. I wasn't shaking. There were no screams, no hysterics, no broken plates. I just stood and looked at the screen at her name. The same colleague he once said they were just joking around with. I smiled. I don't know why. Probably because everything became clear. When he returned, I already knew what I would do. "Matt," I said calmly, "I saw your messages." He was confused at first, then he scoffed. "Oh, stop it, it's just flirting. Everyone does it." "Not everyone," I replied. "Only those who no longer respect the person next to them." He rolled his eyes. "Oh God, the drama again. You've become unbearable lately." That time, I didn't cry for the first time. I just said quietly, "You're right. I truly have changed. And thank God for that." The next day, I went to a lawyer. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because I knew I didn't want my daughter to grow up in a home where love sounds like humiliation. When I told Matt I was filing for divorce, he was silent. Then he just threw out, "You won't make it on your own." I smiled. "You just haven't seen what a woman who is no longer broken is capable of." His mother called a few days later. "Qley, don't destroy the family. Men sometimes make mistakes. I replied calmly, he didn't just make a mistake. He destroyed what we had. I am only picking up the pieces. After that, I packed my things, took my daughter, and we left. No shouting, no scene. Only with the dignity I had found among the ruins. At first, it was scary. But every time I looked in the mirror, I saw not a broken woman, but one who stood strong. And when he once wrote, "You've changed. You're not the one I knew anymore," I replied, "Yes. Because the one you knew no longer exists." And thank God. Life after the divorce was strangely quiet. At first, this silence was frightening. After the constant arguments and reproaches, it seemed almost unnatural. But with each day, I felt that it wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of freedom. I woke up again with a desire to live. Workouts became my ritual, my medicine. I got up at dawn, went for a run, listened to music, felt my body getting stronger and my soul calmer. My Fit Mom Reborn page was rapidly gaining popularity. In the comments, I was called inspiration, goddess of strength, role model. I was invited onto a TV show to tell my story. I sat in the studio under the bright lights with a smile on my face, and when the host asked, "What did you feel when you realized he had cheated on you?" I answered honestly, first emptiness, then relief. Because I finally saw what I had been losing for years, myself. That broadcast went viral. My followers grew to hundreds of thousands. I got a contract to create my own line of sportswear for young mothers. I launched the online course Reborn After Motherhood, and every time women wrote to me, "Your story changed me," I quietly smiled. Because I knew it wasn't about fitness. It was about self-love. And then one evening, as I was returning from a workout, a message arrived on my phone. From him. "Saw you on TV. You're truly incredible. I regret it." I looked at the screen for a long time. There was no anger. There was no joy. Just peace. I only replied, "Yes, Matt. I changed. And now I understand I was never spoiled. You just didn't see the real me." That evening, I stood in front of the mirror, not to assess my figure, but to see who I had become. A woman who walked through hell and did not burn, but blossomed. A year has passed. My life is nothing like it used to be. I wake up with a smile, hug my daughter, and thank myself for not giving up. Someone new has entered my life, a man who doesn't measure me by before or after, who sees not a mother, not a blogger, but a woman in me. Sometimes I get messages from my followers, "How did you manage to rise after all that?" And I always answer the same thing. I just stopped waiting for someone to save me. And I saved myself. My body is no longer what it once was. But now I see strength in it. My heart is not the same either. But it loves truly, calmly, without fear. When I record another video for my blog, I look straight into the camera and say, "If someone told you that you were spoiled after giving birth, don't believe it. You are not broken. You have been reborn."